The Ghermezians are actually the third developer to attempt to build this mall. The first developer went bankrupt. The second developer almost went bankrupt. A few months later, COVID happened and everything was shut down. It's definitely faced a lot of challenges, and that was just the beginning.
So Susie, you reported on Greg Corbin for the latest issue of the magazine. Tell me how he came onto your radar.
Right. So we've been covering him for a while. He actually opened up his newest firm, the firm he has now, Northgate. He really popped up for me because I was reading this article in Bloomberg Law about how bankruptcies in Brooklyn were really leading the way nationally. They'd surged. And rent-stabilized bankruptcies were one of the big causes there. Mm-hmm. And he was quoted in the article, and I started looking into him, and I was like, oh, he seems to be the bankruptcy guy for real estate in New York City. Let me chat with him.
Yeah, and obviously it's a really valuable time to be the bankruptcy guy. Tell me why in terms of the market, and then how Greg came to be that person.
Across the board, commercial real estate is having issues. We know this. Office buildings are struggling with occupancy, and there are defaults on loans, and there are foreclosures. And bankruptcy is sort of this like alternative to foreclosure, produces a cleaner title and higher bids. One of the issues is the loan does go recourse, but Greg kind of has a solve for that we can get into later. Yeah. On the other end of things, rent-stabilized deals are also struggling because of a 2019 law that effectively caps revenue in the buildings as expenses continue to rise. So there are these two pain points in the commercial real estate world, and they are fueling opportunity for folks like Greg Corbin, who offer this solution to borrowers who are up against a foreclosure and really feel like there's no other option and are looking for something that can get them out of the space they're in the most painless way possible.
Yeah. Now, you're talking about people who are up against a wall already, as you said. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, bankruptcy is a scary word for a lot of people. Right. But Greg has some ways of making that more palatable. You mentioned a cleaner title, but tell me about some of the other strategies and just how he talks to these building owners to get them a little bit more comfortable with the concept of going through bankruptcy.
So a key part of that is when you file for bankruptcy, Chapter 11, and you have a loan, it turns that loan recourse most of the time because there are these bad boy carve-outs, and filing for bankruptcy is one. And what that means is that the lender can go after the borrower personally for the debt. And, this is like tens of millions of dollars. Mm-hmm. It's, as you said, frightening amount of money. This sort of workaround or solution that Greg has crafted is that the lender will agree to accept less of what is owed it. So say the loan is $25 million, it's a rent-stabilized building. The lender says, okay, it seems like this building is probably worth $18 million. We'll take 18 for it. Mm-hmm. The building goes to auction. Say it only fetches $15 million. The borrower still has to pay that $3 million difference, but it doesn't have to pay the full $25 million. So, it's not on the hook for that. So it's a little bit better. It's actually a lot better for these guys. And I think the other thing is that, Greg is dealing with people who are extremely stressed, I think is like putting it mildly. A lot of them are multi-generational owners, and these buildings, it's not just a business, it's something they really care about. And the fact that they're losing them is deeply upsetting. So I think he's really good at being able to talk with people, sort of explain how the process will go, and then also making sure that enough people show up to auction that the building is going to fetch the type of bids that will be in the best interest of the borrower and then also of the lender. Yeah.
This is a pretty stressful job, it sounds like. And Greg has some strategies for keeping his own cool, right?
Yeah, he does. Yeah. Greg is someone who is a meditator. He's good at controlling the aspects of his life that he needs in order to work as hard as he does.
Yeah.
So, he drinks one coffee a day and then he goes to chamomile tea. He believes that, if he really works towards something and thinks that it will happen, pan out well, it will. And, that's something that I guess people would push back on a little bit, this idea that you can, manifest your reality. But I would say for him, like, that sort of positive thinking has been useful for him. I don't know if it's a one-to-one situation, but he's certainly in a great position as far as deal volume and bringing in business. And Northgate was recently ranked the #1 bankruptcy firm in New York City, I believe, for the second year in a row. So he definitely has, the accolades to show.
Yeah. And it seems like it's a boom time for him.
Yes.
Right? But from Greg's perspective, where is this market going? How far into this bankruptcy cycle are we?
He and basically anybody else who's looking at this space, and I'm speaking about rent stabilized specifically because I think office is a little bit more of a toss-up. Rent stabilized, the distress is just going to get worse, which means there will be more foreclosures, which means there will be more borrowers who might look at this sort of prepackaged consensual bankruptcy that Greg is kind of making. This sort of consensual prepackaged bankruptcy that has become Greg's thing, like his core offering, one of them at least. I think there's a long runway there, and it's devastating for borrowers. It's bad for the market, but for Greg, it's good.
Yeah. Thanks so much, Susie.
Yeah, thank you.
You did a cover story for our latest magazine talking about the American Dream Mall, but more specifically the Ghermezian family that built it. Tell me who the Ghermezians are, why we care about them, what's interesting about them.
The Ghermezians are a Persian-Jewish family who first emigrated to New York and then eventually made their way to Canada. They lived in Edmonton, and that's where they started buying real estate. The grandfather, Jacob, who was called Papa Ghermezian, had a rugs and antique business. And he parlayed the money that he made from that into buying small pieces of real estate. His real estate purchases eventually grew larger and larger, and he built his first mall in Edmonton in the 1980s.
Yeah. And then the Ghermezians have continued to sort of expand that empire. They also own the Mall of America, right?
Yeah.
But you covered for this article the American Dream in New Jersey specifically. Paint the picture inside the American Dream for me. It's huge, right?
It's 3 million square feet. It has a water park. It has an amusement park. It has a ski slope. It has a luxury wing. It has kind of a mid-level shopping wing, and then it has a more affordable wing. So it's got a little bit of everything. It's half amusements, half retail. It's pretty spectacular. Everything is supersized. Everything is colorful. There's a lot of loud music, candy stores, restaurants, groceries. It's like nothing you've ever seen.
Yeah. And it's it's a unique strategy, right? Bringing experiential retail into the malls. They had some degree of this at the Mall of America, but the American Dream was difficult to get built, right? Tell me about some of the challenges that they faced in actually getting this project off the ground.
So the Ghermezians are actually the third developer to attempt to build this mall. The first developer went bankrupt. The second developer almost went bankrupt. The Ghermezians rescued the project in 2011 and spent billions of dollars to finish it. And, it finally opened in October 2019. And a few months later, COVID happened and everything was shut down. So it's definitely faced a lot of challenges, and that was just the beginning.
Yeah. Walking through the space with Paul Ghermezian, what picture did you get of what the mall means to the family and how connected the family is with the sort of day-to-day operations of the mall? I mean, it seems like it's a big family company, right?
Yeah, there are a lot of family members. A lot are involved in the business. I would say Paul was very proud of the mall. He said that there was a WhatsApp chat that the family was in constant communication on about this mall and their other two malls, that they would check in almost daily because they have family members in Minnesota at Mall of America. They still have family members in Edmonton involved in that mall. So they're very much involved in all of these projects and have a lot of pride and a lot invested in them.
Yeah. At the same time, it's been a challenging market for retail for a couple years. You know, there are parts of the retail market that are really struggling, have really struggled, and some that have done really well. So where does American Dream sort of fall in that really varied landscape?
So it had two very difficult years, 2021 and 2022. They lost $245 million. Things have started to turn around recently. If you've been to the mall in the last year, you'll notice there are new luxury stores. There's now a Gucci, there's an Hermes, there's a Saks Fifth Avenue, a Balenciaga. And so as retail has sort of made a comeback, that's reflected in the mall. When I first visited it, when the amusement park first opened, there were virtually no stores there.
Yeah.
And I was really surprised when I went a couple months ago and a lot of the empty storefronts were filled. There were people shopping. So it's definitely riding this recent wave of a retail recovery.
Yeah.
And hoping to continue that.
Yeah. So I guess we'll have to sort of wait and see what the next phase looks like for American Dream and whether, you know, this all sort of does play out in our favor. But did you get any sense from Paul about projects that are next?
Well, the big thing is the World Cup, which is coming next summer, 2026, to MetLife Stadium, which is right across the street. So that's going to bring a lot of international visitors, a lot of tourists, and I think they're kind of gearing up for that, hoping to add more luxury stores. They've just hired a new leasing team to try and lease some more of the luxury spaces. I think they're, you know, continuing to ramp up in anticipation of that.
Awesome. Thanks, Liz.
Thank you.
Magazine, the sort of slug, the headline for your story was just how brokers get paid. So first of all, how do they get paid? And then tell me why that is sort of controversial and the issues with it.
Yeah. You know, I think it's about how brokers get paid and also how they pay back their brokerages.
Yeah.
Brokers, agents are their 1099 contractors. And so they're working off of commission. Typically, how that works is like $1 million deal. They're taking home 2.5–3% of that. That's their gross commission. And then they're giving 30% of that typically to a brokerage. Depends on, you know, where they are, things like that. The benefit is that it's like unlimited earning potential. The other benefit is the more deals you do, the more money you make.
Right.
That's not that different from like any sort of sales-based commission job. Mm-hmm. The difference with agents is that like they don't really get fired for a bad year or two.
Right.
Part of that is because they don't have benefits like health insurance or retirement benefits that a W-2 sales employee might have.
Yeah.
On top of that, the freedom that a lot of independent contractors get to work for multiple companies at once. Agents don't have the freedom of movement that independent contractors in other industries do, but they also don't get the security and benefits that a typical W-2 employee might.
Right. And it's a tumultuous time in the market, which means the sales are down for a lot of agents, making an already challenging job, you know, all the more challenging. On top of that, last year with the NAR settlement, there were some pretty big changes to the way the commissions are structured. How have those things converged on these issues, and how's that sort of changed the way agents feel about it, the way the brokerages are dealing with it?
Yeah. The biggest change really has been the conversation around, one, the value that agents provide to their clients. Agents have been forced to articulate their value to buyers and say, this is why you need to pay me my commission. Yeah. That's also led agents to, I think, start questioning the value that they're getting from their brokerages. Yeah. Agents that are giving brokerages 30% of every deal they do are starting to wonder, am I getting the equivalent value back from my brokerage? At the same time, a lot of the biggest brokerages in the country have been facing a couple of difficult years. A lot of them aren't even profitable. And so they're facing these commission headwinds, and they're just trying to cling on to any money that they're getting from their agents. When we're talking about something like clawbacks, which is this oddity in the independent contractor space, that's something that brokerages aren't particularly keen to change because that's how they hold on to their money.
What would have to happen for this to change, right? For brokerages to decide to restructure the way that their contracts work with their agents, or for agents to, you know, really gain the leverage to push back on their brokerages?
While brokerages use these clawbacks in which they're, taking back commissions from agents that leave to recoup some of their money, they're also keen to get rid of them because when they bring on agents, they often have to reimburse those agents for the money that some other brokerage has clawed back. So brokerages don't really like the system. Agents don't really like the system. The biggest problem is that we're sort of in this entrenched cycle of brokerages taking money back from agents, then brokerages giving money to agents that come over, and nobody knows how to get out. And, on top of that is this issue where nobody has enough money to really opt out of the system. We're seeing, some outliers. The agency's branch in East Hampton has said that they're doing away with clawbacks.
Yeah.
Some agents are finding ways to opt out, when they're striking out of their own. You have Ryan Serhant, obviously, but you also have companies like Side that provide agents the resources to be independent. What's difficult with that is that means agents often have to pay brokerages out of pocket instead of getting reimbursed by going to another big player. Everybody wants the system to change, but nobody really seems willing to be the person that takes the first step.
Yeah. Thanks, Jamie.